All right. So I think we are live now in the Living Off Rentals Facebook group. So John, welcome to the podcast, man.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite, Kirby. I'm really looking forward to our chat.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I was running a little bit late, but I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy man. And just by way of introduction here, for those who are listening, John is a fellow West Point grad. He's also currently a major in the Army, right? You're a major?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Not promotable yet?
Nope.
All right. So he's currently a major in the Army on active duty. He's got a really impressive real estate business that we're going to talk about that's seen some pretty incredible growth recently. He's got a big family also, which is impressive that you can manage all that at the same time. And then, during your day job, you work at the Center for Enhanced Performance at West Point. So essentially, getting cadets to perform at their highest level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is.
Yeah. So I remember, as a cadet, I went to the, do they still have the egg chairs at the?
Yeah, we still got the egg chairs.
Nice.
You spent some time in the egg chair, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. They got these egg chairs at the Center for Enhanced Performance. And you could go there and they used to say it's like 4 hours of sleep for every 1 hour in the egg chair. It's like this insanely relaxing experience to sit in the egg chairs and you can like meditate. And there's like so much science behind that. Back then I just was like wanting a break from being yelled at, but
for sure. It's fun. And it's one of those things that we're known for. If anyone's seen the movie Men in Black, it's, we often get called like the Men in Black chairs, so.
Yeah.
Sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm excited to hear about how, this work relates or how you're, doing this work and then how it relates to your real estate investment company. So if you can just first fill in some of the blanks that I left from your background.
Yeah, I think because we're going to talk about the kind of mindset performance side, I've got to talk about sports. I grew up as an athlete. I was a type of kid who had natural talent, but at the same time, liked to think I worked pretty hard in the off season, worked hard in practice, was always in love with goal setting. I was the kid that, walking through the halls in junior high, if there was a motivational quote on the wall, like I would write it down and then I would hang that in my own room, right? Like I loved motivational quotes. I love reading books about goal setting. I used to put goals all over my room and I think it helped me, right? And then at a certain point, I decided I wanted to go play football at West Point. I wanted to go play Army football. And, long story short, I called the Army football coaches and I was like, hey, coaches, I really want to come play football for you. And they were like, hey, that's awesome, but you're not good enough. And I was like, oh, no, what am I going to do? So I called a lot of other football coaches. None of them, really wanted me to play. But I was like, I want to go play football at West Point. And I'm going to figure out how to make that happen. And so it was just a goal. And I worked my tail off, ended up getting into West Point as a recruited shot putter. So the track coaches were like, you're a good enough shot putter to get into West Point, but I wasn't a good enough football player. And then the day I got to West Point, I tried out for the football team, walked down to the football team, ended up making the football team, being a starting linebacker and team captain by my senior year. But I did a lot of that. I attribute a lot of it to the mindset aspect of that. And what I mean by mindset, I don't want to make it sound like some abstract thing, right? But it's I tried my best to increase my awareness and figure out what am I good at and what am I not good at. And the stuff I am good at, I want to put a ton of effort there so I can become great at those things. And then the things I'm not good at, some of them I want to improve, and some of them I'm just going to say, hey, I'm never going to be good at that. So I think awareness is really important. And then goal setting, just like, hey, my goal, my overall goal was to get to West Point, play Army football. Then my big goal was to become an All-American. I did not become an All-American. I tried, worked my butt off, and I came up short. But those are the big goals. But then what I think the money's really made is what are you doing day in and day out? And I'm a big goal setting is important, but I think the short-term goals, the daily goals, what are the work you're putting in day in and day out is what really matters. Then I got out into the Army. and realized that a lot of soldiers and a lot of leaders kind of think like I do. And there was an appetite for talking about goal setting and talking about how you can increase your confidence. And then I applied to come back and teach at West Point, and they sent me to get a master's degree. And I got to study under a guy who's done more goal setting research than I think anyone in the field. So the Army paid for me to get a master's degree in sport and performance psychology, which is crazy. And then got stationed back at West Point. And now my day job, my Army job, is I work with cadets to help them be their best, whether that is helping someone step off the high dive in swim class, or it's a football player trying to become an All-American, or anything in between. And then I also actively invest in real estate and try to help real estate investors have the right mindset to be successful. And my real passion and the thing I continue to work on creating more time for is my family. I've got an awesome wife and 4 amazing kids that are my pride and joy. So that's me in a nutshell.
Dude, it's amazing how similar our stories of getting into West Point are.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I wanted to play football at West Point too. So my high school coach at the time, back then it was VHS tapes. So he
Yep.
sent my VHS tapes to the coach, and they let me in the back door through prep school. And
Okay.
unlike you, I never actually got to play. The team was really cut down at the time. It was extremely small. Just kind of the blue chip recruits were kept on the team, but it got me in the door. So it was it led to a lot of other positive things. So that's awesome, man. So what I'm curious, people hear Center for Enhanced Performance, and it sounds pretty fancy, and it sounds like at West Point, this is like, they say it's like the premier leadership institution in the world. So getting performance out of some of the top leaders, what does the curriculum look like there? Like how does the process work for someone, and what is the change that's made from before they go into the center or work with the center and to after?
Yeah, so West Point overall is what we call a 47-month leadership development experience, right? And we won't go into it too much, right? But we understand that we're going to take a high school kid or a young person into West Point, and then we're going to try to mold them and influence them and develop them to try to be the best leader they can be, right? Well, we're in a position where if someone wants to work on the mindset aspect of that, they come sit down with me or one of my team members, and they say, hey, I want to get better. We go, okay, awesome. Like, let's do it, right? And our curriculum starts with, what does getting awesome look like for you, right? Like, what does that actually mean? And that could mean, hey, I just want to pass all my classes. It could mean, hey, I want to get a 4.0 and compete for a Rhodes Scholar. We work on that entire spectrum, right? We try to be there for every cadet, okay? But it is awareness of where are you today and where do you want to be 4 years from now or 2 years from now or some given time from now, right? So that's kind of the roadmap. And then the next place I always go with everyone, even real estate investors, is I go, how much sleep are you getting? And they're like, hey, I don't care about sleep. Like, I just want to talk about the mindset. I'm like, yeah, your mindset doesn't matter if you're getting 4 hours of sleep, right? So we work on sleep, nutrition, and exercise. If you got to have those things in order, whether you're a cadet, in my opinion, if you're a real estate investor, you should make sure you're doing those things as well to live a nice, healthy life, right? But good exercise, good nutrition, make sure you're getting good sleep. And cadets are crazy busy. We've got tons of cadets that are getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And I try to be an advocate to them, like, hey, you might not get 8 hours of sleep every night, but let's try your best to get 6 or 7 hours. You're going to perform a lot better, right? So then once we have that roadmap and we can set the foundation of like, hey, are you getting your big 3 done? Then we can start saying, what are some of those insecurities that might be holding you back, right? Do you sit in class and struggle because you don't think you're as smart as the other cadets there? Do you maybe look around your military formation and you look at other people and say, hey, that person's an amazing leader and I don't think I can ever be that good of a leader? Or on the football field, you say, hey, coach doesn't like me. Every time coach yells at me, it hurts my confidence. And we can start working through all those different issues.
That's incredible. So one thing I'm curious about, and I'm just going to ask you questions that I'm curious about, hopefully others are as well. so cadets typically are not slouches. I think 45% of my class was either salutatorians or valedictorians from their high school. I can assure you I was not in that
Yeah.
group. But they don't visit this center like being like with their life in shambles, and then you help fix it. It's, they're performing at a pretty high level to start with. So do you notice a big difference between the results you get from someone who is already performing at a high level and wants to achieve like greatness, or and compare that, I guess, to somebody who's like kind of struggling? I mean, do you see a big uptick in the person that's struggling and not the person who's kind of performing at the highest level? And the reason I'm asking is, do you feel like there's a cap that you can get people to, and that's kind of it? Or have you seen like the performance, you can just continue to improve someone's performance?
Yeah, I think it's a simple question, but the answer is maybe philosophical, right? So I would say a couple things to that. I would say any organization has a spectrum, right? Even the most elite organization, we could go to Delta Force or Green Berets, or you could go to quarterbacks in the NFL, right? Like every organization, there's going to be a spectrum of how talented people are. So at West Point, there's a spectrum. They're the best of the best. I should give a shout out too. I'm also a fellow prepster. This may be the first podcast with two prepsters that we're on. So I'm a product of the United States Military Academy Preparatory School, right? But there's a spectrum everywhere, right? So when you say, hey, does maybe the person who's struggling benefit more from our services than the person that's already doing great? Maybe, right? Maybe, I don't know. But the way I look at it in my work is I don't want to try to make those judgments before someone walks into my office, right? When someone walks into my office, I want to say, I don't care where you are, right? If there's any place in your life where you think there's room for improvement, and if you don't think there's room for improvement, I'll help you become more aware and point those things out. I want to help you be better, right? So maybe the way your mind's going is, hey, what if you have this guy who, is an All-American, 4.0 student, he's rocking everything. How do you help that person? If you talk to that person long enough, there's struggles in his life, right? Like there's things, whether it's personal, whether, it's hidden, there's things in everyone's life that they're struggling with. And if they can talk through those things and get some good advice from someone, chances are they're going to perform better. Or sometimes we start going away from performance and away from the measurable stuff. And we also can just talk about like joy and happiness, right? There's some people that are doing really, really well externally, but inside they're struggling a little bit. So we want to say, hey, you're doing amazing at this sport, but let's talk through it so maybe you can increase your enjoyment with that sport as well.
That's such great perspective for people to have and to hear from someone who works with all different levels of people. Because I think people can get in that mindset of, oh, it's easy for that person. They've got all the talent. But like you said, everybody's got those things that are holding them back in the back of their head. And so I think once you recognize that, you're willing to go beyond it yourself, because you know that it's just there for everyone. So for the regular guy who's sitting at home right now listening to this podcast, they're probably a real estate investor, I'm guessing, if they're listening to this podcast. But the new year's coming up, and they probably want to be more successful, more happier, more fulfilled, in a better place next year. So are there like one or two standout practices or things that you guys go through that you would recommend really have made the biggest impact on people that they could adopt?
Yes. Someday I'm going to have a book or a series about New Year's resolutions, because I got a spot for them, right? But let's see, where do I start? Number one, I would say start December 1st instead of January 1st, so you can get a month ahead. Okay. That's a first tip, right? But seriously, I would say, let's say your goal for 2021 is I want to get 3 rental properties, right? Like, hey, good to go. I think that's a great goal. Let's take a big permanent marker and let's write that on the whiteboard and say, hey, in 2021, we will own 3 more rental properties. Okay. I love that. But then, like, most people stop goal setting right there. They're like, good, I wrote it down. It's going to happen. It's magic, right? And like, no, sorry, the world doesn't really work like that, right? So then the question is, like, what do you actually have to do to buy those 3 rental properties, right? Like, okay, well, we have to get one every 4 months. Like, all right, we can all do math. We get that. But like, what does that actually mean? Like, how do you find that deal, right? Like, how are you going to find a deal? How are you going to fund the deal if you do find it? How are you going to stabilize it and maybe burr it out or get property management in place? What does all that look like? And then after we kind of figure that out, it's okay, if you are in fact going to start on January 1st, what are you going to do on January 1st to help put you in a position to buy 3 rental properties this year? And what I like to do is say, I want to know what you're going to do January 1st. And then I want to know what you're going to do January 2nd and January 3rd and January 4th. Because I'm of the opinion that success happens day after day after day after day after day, right? Like, your today becomes your tomorrow, becomes your week, becomes your year, becomes your life, right? So too many people look at goal setting and it's always up ahead of them, right? And I'm looking at it like, what are your daily habits and routines that you can implement today or January 1st, right? What are those habits and routines that you can implement that will help you buy 3 rental properties this year? And maybe it's education. Maybe it's talking to real estate agents or talking to wholesalers. Maybe it's talking to friends and family about raising private money. But I would do my best to say, what are those areas that I need to work on? And then what is the 1, 2, or 3 things that I'm going to do every single day for the month of January, right? Maybe I'm going to call 2 real estate agents every day in the month of January. I'm going to call a family friend or someone in my network every day in January and try to talk about real estate investing. I'm going to, listen to 1 podcast every day in January. And I like making that goal pretty small, right? A lot of people with New Year's resolutions are like, I'm going to lose 40 pounds. I'm never going to eat a carb again, and like, all right, that's not going to last past first contact. Let's make the goal in January so easy anyone could achieve it, right? Because goal setting so much about just getting some wins early, getting some momentum, starting to feel like you're getting closer. And then after a month in, go, okay, where am I? Am I closer to getting those 3 rental properties? If I am, perfect, let's keep doing it. If I'm not, let's reassess, right? If I say, let's write our long-term goals in permanent marker, but let's write our short-term goals in pencil, because our short-term goals should be changing all the time depending on what is working and what isn't working. Hopefully that's concise enough. Like I said, I can talk a long time about New Year's resolutions.
That doesn't sell as well as The Secret, where you just kind of put it out there and it happens,
Yes, right.
But I totally agree, man. One of my favorite books is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Yeah. He was the editor of Success Magazine. And basically after years and years of interviewing the most successful people out there, he kind of compiled their practices. And it speaks a lot to what you just said. It's like success compounds on itself. And it works the same way as compound interest. And when you're investing, it just little wins turn into big wins over time. And that's awesome. That's such great advice. So I kind of want to transition to more real estate now. I'd love to hear, I guess, what your business looks like now, the business that you're pursuing now, and how you've incorporated some of the principles that you teach at the center into developing your real estate business.
Yes, me and a couple West Point friends started early in 2020. I've been in real estate investing for 5 or 6 years. Done some flips, done some buy and holds. Have nine rentals right now. But in 2020, we said, hey, instead of trying to do all this by ourselves, let's team up and try to have a little more buying power and see what we can do together. So we started looking at properties, things started going well. And then, middle of March, COVID hit, and it was like, whoa, world is stuck on its head. And our main plan was basically to burr, right? To start building a rental portfolio and try to get good deals and burr out of them. And then, for a period of time there, a lot of those hard money lenders where you could get money from just said, hey, we're not lending at all right now. There's too much uncertainty. So like, man, what are we going to do, right? And at the same time, we said, hey, let's try to use some of these marketing tactics that wholesalers use. Like, let's try to send a bunch of text messages. Let's try to cold call. Let's try to pull vacant owner lists to call these people. So we're in this position come, April or so, where the marketing's starting to work. We're starting to get deals. and the hard money people like won't even, return our emails, and we call them, they're like, this voicemail box is full. You're like, what? So like, what are we going to do? And at some point we're like, why don't we try to wholesale one of these deals? And I imagine a lot of us have listened to Bigger Pockets. They hate on wholesalers. The real estate industry hates on wholesalers. I'm like, I'm not trying to be a wholesaler, right? Like, I'm not trying to do this. And like, let's just try, right? So we have this property that it's kind of beat up, but we end up going to do a walkthrough, and it's like trash. It's in terrible condition. So we give the property owner, I think it's like offer of like $50,000. It's like, $180,000 house, but it's trash. We give him an offer for $50,000, and he accepts. We're like, oh, he accepted. Like, the numbers work here, but this is going to be like a $50,000-$60,000 rehab. What are we going to do? I'm like, I don't know if it was me. I don't want to take credit, but someone in our team was like, let's try to wholesale it. I was like, I don't know, like, I'm not really comfortable with that. I'm like, let's try it. And within a week, we sold it for, I think it was $65,000. So we made, over $10,000 within like a week wholesaling this property. And at that moment, I had a light bulb go off, and I was like, whoa, wait a second here, guys. Like, I've done flips before, and I've had rentals, and making $10,000 on a flip or a rental is really, really tough. And we just made $10,000. Truth be told, we got really lucky. Like, maybe that was the luckiest deal we have gotten since, right? But it was enough to prove the concept that, hey, I think we can double down on some of this marketing material, and we can start trying to wholesale these properties. Our thesis was also that we started around Fort Hood, Texas, Killeen, Texas, is that there's a large landlord population in military towns. So we thought, hey, I think if we can text these landlords and get them on a phone and say, hey, we can buy your property, even if there's a renter in there, I think we should find some properties. And it worked, right? So at this point, we're like, 6 months in, talking today. In this year, since April, we've wholesaled or bought right around 50 properties. So as soon as it started working, we're like, let's do more. That's kind of my personality, right? Like, let's take this goal setting and just double, triple, quadruple down on it. So now we're a team. It's me and one partner, Frank Scapitici, who's awesome. And then we've got 2 awesome acquisitions guys. And we've also got a team in the Philippines that are putting a bunch of hours in helping us out as well.
Wow. 50 deals since April?
Yeah.
So right now is November. And you're working full time. I mean, for people who say that this is not possible, like, that's insane. So what are some of the things, like, this is not ordinary, obviously. I don't talk to too many people who say I did 50 deals in the last 6 months after doing my first wholesale deal 6 months ago. So I don't know that I've ever met anyone who's done that. So what are the things that make this possible? Like, why can you do this and this is not normal?
Well, I'll talk about our business first, and then I'll kind of talk about me individually. So business-wise, the book Ready, Fire, Aim, right? Like, I've never even read the book, but I read the title and I was like, I get it, right? Like, let's
do that a lot, yeah.
Yeah. So then it was like, hey, I have an idea that if we get really good people on our team, people that I trust and people that I love and people that I think are great people, and we can teach them about real estate, I think they're going to work their tails off for us. And I think we can all kind of benefit, right? So there was that. And then it was right off the bat, we took that money and we started paying for coaches. Like, right off the bat, the money we started getting, the first $10,000 or $15,000 wholesale fee we got, we turned around and the same week we invested in a $5,000 course to help us keep doing it, right? Like, we got super lucky, but we at least had the awareness to know we have something here. And if we can get in the same room with some people that have been successful and we can pick their brains, I think we can mimic it, right? And so what we've been doing over the last 6 months is we've just been trying to iterate, right? So I've got a full-time job. I haven't talked to a seller and it's probably been a couple months since I've talked to a seller, but we've got systems set up so the systems can operate without me. So then my work on a daily basis is meeting with our team members and trying to tweak those systems, trying to optimize those systems, figure out how we can bring in new hires, how can we create systems to better measure things. And then I think on a personal basis, my big things are I've got to get 7 hours of sleep and I've got to work out hard every morning. Like that's my rock. That's my everything. If I don't get good sleep, I'm a crabby person, super emotional, like don't be around me. But if I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, I'm good to go. And I had told myself for years and years I had to work out in the afternoon. But what I realized is if I plan to work out in the afternoon, it just never happens. So this whole time, and for a couple years now, I try my best to get 7 hours of sleep every night. I wake up at 5:30 in the morning and go to the gym and work out really hard. And then when it's time to be an Army officer, I try my best to put my entire heart behind that and be the absolute best Army officer I can be and try to change those lives. Then I come home and spend time with the kids and throw them up in the air and give them big sloppy kisses because I love them so much. And then I usually get on the phone and start talking to our team and start comping properties and work my tail off and fall into bed sometime around 9:30 or 10 o'clock.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. It shows that you work out every morning. You could probably slap the pads on right now and go back out there, right?
I always say I definitely couldn't play a whole game, but I'd be pretty good for a player too.
That's cool. So I remember what resonated with me when we talked like a month ago. I was asking you about this because I was like just blown away. And by the way, like we met through one of those coaching programs. Like big shout out to Dan Schwartz who runs the 80/20 Investor Academy. But we went to the same school and we have a lot of shared experiences. But we met through just a coaching program that any real estate investor could join. It wasn't like some secret West Point handshake or something like that. So, but what resonated with me when I asked you about this was you told me from day one, you guys acted as if you were doing, 50 deals at a time. You said, okay, how can we operate? Obviously if we're just doing one, we're going to do things way different than if we're doing 50. So let's pretend we're doing 50 or whatever the number was, a high volume from day one. And that sets you up is what it seems like to me. I think myself included, like a lot of people are their own worst enemy. Like you know what you know, and what you know is how to do one deal because you start with one deal and then you tack on more deals, but you don't change your systems. It always goes back to you. And so I think being super intentional, it seems like that's the huge difference maker here is that you guys are so intentional about the actions you take. Like you said, you haven't talked to a seller in 2 months and because that's not your job, but it's easy to pick up the phone and say, oh, here's a hot lead. I'm going to call them right now. So do you find yourself doing that? I mean, is it hard to stay disciplined that way?
I don't think so. Because kind of what you're alluding to from that, from day one, we've been trying to scale, right? So the first time I did it, right? The first time I gave the keys to someone else and said, I want you to send the text messages. I want you to close. I want you to comp this property, right? Comping properties is one. It was really hard to give that up. But then as soon as I gave them up, I knew as a good leader, I had to be like, it's yours now. Right. And if I start looking over your shoulder, like I'm never going to give you the opportunity to be your best. So I've tried my best to put that wall up and say, hey, now it's you. What's interesting is now I'm trying like where we've kind of had 2 levels in our company, right? We've had me and my partner and then another level. What we're trying to do now is level those guys up and fill virtual assistants underneath them. We've got 3 virtual assistants right now. We're getting ready to scale to 6 virtual assistants. So now I'm having the same conversation with our 2 acquisition guys. It's like, you are no longer allowed to do these $10 an hour tasks, right? You are no longer allowed to send these emails. Like we need to start automating this stuff so we can leverage you up as well. And now we can kind of have multiple levels there. So hopefully it's part of our culture and it is hard, right? Like I screw it up all the time, but it's something we try to be really intentional about.
What's your goal with this business? What do you think is possible or what are you shooting for?
Yeah, so I think if my partner was here, he would say we want to be the number one kind of broker of off-market single-family real estate deals in the country, right? So we have the potential to be an iBuyer. We're quickly kind of transitioning from just being a wholesaler to, hey, sometimes investors aren't able to see these numbers and analyze these deals like we are. So there's sometimes investors are like, this isn't really a deal. And we're like, dude, this is definitely a deal. If you don't want to buy it, we'll just buy it ourselves, right? So we're starting to buy a lot of deals. So I think we have potential to grow it pretty big. But I would say my goal is, I don't know how this will sound, but I think adjectives more, right? Like I want to have a lot of fun doing this business. I want to work with people I really, really respect. I hope to have enough money that my family can live kind of whatever life we decide, fits our lifestyle. And then I hope I have enough that I can make a difference in a community or in a cause that means a lot to me, right? So I love real estate, but real estate is definitely the vehicle to help me live the best life. It's not the end destination, right? And back to the wellness thing, I heard on a Bigger Pockets podcast one time, someone said, hey, every real estate agent I know is an alcoholic, a drug addict, divorced, or overweight. And I was like, oh, well, I want to be a real estate investor. I don't want to be any of those things, right? But I can see how that happens to people, right? Like real estate investing can be addicting. You can really, really start obsessing about how many rentals you have or how many deals you're doing or how much money you're making. And you can see that path of, if I did 3 deals, if I could double it to 6 and double it to 12, right? You can get overly obsessed. So I have really big business goals, right? Like I want to build a big, successful company. But I think more than that, I want to build a company that I really, really enjoy the people I'm working with, and it means a lot to me.
It's funny. I recently had the author of Life and Air on. That episode just came out. I just released it yesterday, actually. But it's Steve Cook, and in the book he talks a lot about what you are alluding to. That putting your life first, and then building your business around that structure. I totally agree that it can become just all about the numbers, and you lose sight of why you even started this, to provide for your family or provide financial freedom or the flexibility. So I think that's a great thing to keep at the forefront. I kind of want to get a little bit tactical because I think there's some newer listeners who might be listening. And I know this is typically all about rentals, but just in terms of wholesaling, when people hear that you did 50 deals, I think the next question especially for new people who don't understand like how high volume wholesaling works, can you explain that process? I had Ryan Schlebeck on the podcast, a couple of weeks ago, and he's doing some high volume wholesaling as well. And we talked a little bit about like how you buy a property from, you're in New York and you get one under contract in, Indiana here, and you go through the whole transaction, never even seeing that property. So who are the key people, and how do you have like inspectors on the ground that you're working with? How do you get people to walk through and see the property?
Yeah, so it depends on the market. Sometimes we have people go do the inspection, but a lot of times it just goes like this, where we primarily send text messages. So we're going to send, close to 10,000 text messages a day to people that we identify that are a landlord or someone in distress, right? From public records, we can pull landlord stuff, and then distress list. If someone's behind on their mortgage, or they have vacant property, or they're behind on taxes, they have a lien against their property, they're going through a divorce, all that is public records, okay? So we can pull that information. We then skip trace it or get their phone numbers, and then we send text messages to all those people saying, hey, would you like to sell your house to us, right? And almost all of them say no, don't ever text me again. Like, okay, Roger, right? Some of them say, yeah, maybe, like, tell me more about it, right? So it starts dwindling it down, and after we send all those text messages, we'll get on the phone with some people, and we'll say, hey, I know this is crazy. I'm not in Indiana. I live in New York. But what my company does is we buy homes for cash at a fair price on your timeline. Is that something you're interested in? And if that person's interested, we'll agree on a price. Usually our price is going to be right around 70% of what that that house is worth. So it's a $100,000 house. We're going to say, hey, we can buy it for $70,000, right? And some people might be going like, hey, that will never work, right? And yeah, it usually doesn't, right? Like usually when we talk to people, they're like, no, I wouldn't do that. And we say, that's fine. Like you need to make the best decision for you and your family. But if you're in a position where the $70,000 is worth it because you don't want to have showings and you don't want to deal with uncertainty and you don't want to have a long timeline, I think we could be a great fit. And if they do say they're a great fit, then we get it under contract for $70,000, and then we will market it to cash buyers in the area. So we will say, hey, cash buyers in the area, who wants to go check out this house? And we'll set up a time to have those cash buyers go check out their house and have the owner show them around the house. And then they'll potentially make us an offer, say it's $80,000. And then we'll go to closing. The cash buyer will pay the $80,000. We'll give the $70,000 to the homeowner, and we'll keep that $10,000 in the middle. Okay, so that's basically how wholesaling works.
So you don't have anyone on the ground, like the owner is actually opening the door for the potential buyers.
That's how we want to do it, right? So we want to be able to scale to any place in the country. And if we need boots on the ground, then that's a limiting factor. So in some places we have awesome contractors and people we trust to do it. But our ideal process is we don't have to have anyone on the boots on the ground. So then the question everyone says, well, like, how do you know the seller is telling you the truth on the condition of the property? Well, when we talk to them and we make that offer, we say, okay, let's close our eyes and pretend you're giving me a tour of your property right now. Like, let's talk about the curb appeal. Like, what does this house look like from the curb, right? And sometimes we'll just get an answer like, oh, it's in good condition. We'll be like, no, how does the grass look, right? Like, does it have landscaping? Like, tell me about the trees. Are there any trees? We take them through this process, and we have them, mentally walk us through the entire house. And from that, our guys try their best to tally up. Like, sounds like it needs new flooring. Kitchen, we'll say, when's the last time the kitchen has been updated? And if they say, I'm not sure, and the house is 30 years old, that means we probably have to update the entire kitchen, right? So we try our best to then calculate a rehab cost associated with that. And then if we have one of our investors go there, and the investor says, hey, this is a $50,000 rehab, we just talk to the seller and we say, hey, when we talked through this, you said, it was in great condition. So we didn't account for any rehab budget. But after, we had one of our partners walk through, he said it's going to look like a $50,000 rehab. So, where does that leave us? Do you think we can negotiate that, or is it no longer work?
I think it's super interesting how upfront you are. I think a lot of people, when they're first getting started with real estate investing, they think that you've got to be all shifty and try to trick a seller into selling you the property. Like you just said, you're just straightforward. Like, do you want to sell your house? Text message. No. Okay, great. Yes. Okay. We're not going to buy it for full price. We're an investor. Obviously we got to make money. So we're going to pay you 70 cents on the dollar. Like you're very straightforward. You're not trying to trick anyone out of their house or anything like that. I heard someone talk about it one time that 95% of the people who are selling houses, you should not be talking to as an investor. They're retail sellers. They should be talking to an agent. They should list it on the MLS because that's just what people do with retail sales. But the other 5%, the hoarders, the people who inherited a property, live across country, the properties that are in shambles, properties that have all kinds of issues attached to them, or people that need to sell tomorrow because of some situation, those are the 5% you want to identify. So you can do the math on your numbers. You just said 10,000 text messages a day that your VAs are sending with 3 VAs. You did 50 deals. So 10,000 text messages a day, that's 30,000 text messages a month. So that relates to about 10 deals a month over the last 6 months. So, it's all about the math. Once you set up that system that you just talked about, you can just kind of boil it down. And if this is, you've identified this, the business that you want to do, then it's just expanding that math out. So that's super interesting. I really appreciate the detailed breakdown there.
I would like to point that out too, though. Is I think a lot of wholesalers do get a bad name because they do sketchy things, right? Like I would just like to reemphasize that no matter where you are in real estate, number one, like don't be a terrible person, right? Like the golden rule matters, and if you don't treat people with respect, it's going to come back and bite you. I don't know if I froze or you froze.
I think I froze for a second, but I think we're good now.
All good. And one of the things, we have virtual assistants come and they talk to sellers initially. And people are like, I can't believe you let virtual assistants talk to sellers. What if they say the wrong thing? And even the virtual assistants sometimes are like, we don't know enough about real estate. Like, we're not sure what to do. And all we say is like, do what you think is best and use the golden rule. Like if you treat people with respect and you say, I'm so sorry, Mr. Seller, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll talk to my manager and we'll make sure we get the answer to that for you, right? If you use the golden rule, it's going to work. And then if you try to do anything fishy, like everyone has that spidey sense that they're just going to pick up on. So it's not going to work. Like you might be able to, get a deal, get 2 deals, but you're not going to sleep good at night because you're not going to be a good person. And then most of the time it's just not going to work because people are going to tell that you're not an honest and trustworthy person.
Absolutely. Such great advice. All right. I know you're getting close to time. I know you're on the COVID-19 task force there at West Point. And by the way, I have a small wager on the Air Force Army game. So I'd like you to resolve whatever is preventing that game if you could.
Yeah, we got to double down now, right?
That's right. That's right. But last question here. So you've been a leader in the military for the last 10 years, right? You graduated in 2010?
2009, yeah.
2009, okay. So 11 years, yeah. So is there one lesson maybe that stands out from leading troops that, has helped you in life or in your real estate investing that you think would be helpful to share with this community?
Yeah, it comes to me so fast because it's a lesson I teach cadets all the time. When I was at West Point, I thought to be a great leader, you had to act like General Patton, right? Like I thought you had to be a stoic figure that would not smile and would be, you could never be too friendly. You could never be joking around. And because of that, I struggled at West Point. There's a lot of West Point. I was like, I don't know if I fit in. And then I got in the Army and I tried my best to impersonate General Patton every day. And it was terrible. Like I hated the Army. I hated being a leader. I hated everything about it. And I blamed everyone else but myself. And then I don't know what happened, but at some point I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be myself. Like, screw it, right? Like, I'm just going to be myself. And an amazing thing happened, right? Like, number one is I became a much more effective leader, right? Like my personality is such, I like to, be pretty positive. I like to have a lot of energy. I like to joke around and not take myself too seriously. Like I became a lot better. My soldiers and my subordinates and even my seniors were like, you're performing a lot better like this. And then number two, I was like, I love the Army. Like it wasn't the Army, it was me, right? Like I love being a leader so much more when I was just like, I can just be myself. So now when I work with cadets and, they're like, I need to do this as a leader. I need to do that as a leader. I'm like, no, you just need to be yourself. You need to be everything that you are, no matter what your background is, no matter what your strengths and weaknesses, that's what you need to be. That doesn't mean we should stiff arm those things and never try to improve, but we have to be comfortable in our own skin. And I think we have to be authentic to who we are if we're ever going to come close to reaching our potential.
It's true in life. It's true in the Army. It's true in real estate investing. John, I really appreciate all the great advice today. And I think, people are really going to benefit from this interview. So I appreciate you taking the time, and I'll let you get to your next meeting here. Awesome.
I really appreciate it, Kirby. Thanks for having me on. If anyone wants to connect, they can shoot me an email, John, John at graylineinvestments.com. I'd love to connect, but I feel honored to be on this podcast. I was telling you before we started, you've had some awesome people on here. So I definitely got to put it on my resume now. Like, hey, I've been on Kirby's podcast. That means I'm somebody now, baby.
Thanks, buddy. You're right at the top of the list. So I appreciate it.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks.